Hey Elise, Mr. Riggs here. I hope you're doing well, and thank you so much for uploading your incredible 9/11 essay to your personal Google folder here. And just like you did it is how we're going to roll this whole workshop. You're going to upload somehow to your folder, whether it's a Word doc or a PDF, or you write it or copy and paste it directly into a Google Doc like you've done here. And then I make a copy of it, and I edit that copy, and then I make this video explaining some of my edits along the way so that you don't just see what you may be able to correct for next time, but why. So I'm not going to explain every edit. The best way to kind of go through this after you've watched this video is just to kind of click on each edit as it occurs. What's nice with Google, you don't have to scroll through all this and try to go back and forth. All you have to do is click on where an edit occurred, look over at where it corresponds, and makes your job kind of easy, right? And then there's some notes down here that I'm going to explain as we go through. And then on Tuesday in workshop, I'm going to explain what to do with these edits. I think maybe I've said that already. But anywho, let's get to work. I'm going to keep this below 10 minutes here. Great introductory paragraph. Wow, super well done. And you accomplished the two main things that I believe every introductory paragraph ought to do, which is capture the reader's curiosity, and you want to do that within the first sentence or two. We call that the hook, right? And then you need to kind of lay out a little bit of a roadmap, tell the reader where they're headed, what to expect a little bit, and you did that here with a really well done thesis. So congratulations on that. A few things that I did in here to try to improve what you were getting after here. First off, check out this first sentence. It was a good first sentence, but look at what I removed. There was this kind of middle content that I think was kind of blocking you from really saying what you wanted to say, right? Now, it's true. 9/11 was a huge American tragedy that did change America forever, right? But I think you can say the exact same thing and use the rest of your essay to explain what happened by just stating September 11th, 2001 changed America forever, right? And now you've got the reader wondering, how did it change America forever? Why did it change America forever? And then you do a great job with the rest of your essay doing that. One other thing I fixed along the way, when you said, which is true, right? 2 planes crashed into the World Trade Center, 1 into the Pentagon, and 1 into a field in Pennsylvania. Though every reader, right, is going to know, for the most part, there were 4 planes, right? And that's what you were trying to say here. It did, the way it was worded, sound like 2 planes crashed into the World Trade Center. 1 of them crashed into the Pentagon, and 1 of them into a field in Pennsylvania. Now, obviously, geographically, that makes no sense, and math-wise, and we can trust the reader to know the difference. But to make it easy on the reader, we want to make sure that we state somehow that there were 4 planes, right? So 2 planes crashed into the World Trade Center, another crashed into the Pentagon, and a 4th into a field in Pennsylvania. So that helps the reader kind of get the math a little bit sooner. And then we want to make sure that with facts like this, that we kind of fact check ourselves, right? So it was not a farming field, as you know now from the trip out there. It was actually a former mining field. So no huge harm or foul here, but just make sure that when we have these little factoids of research, that they are indeed correct. Okay, down here with this adjective vary. Now, I'm not going to explain all this right now, but just know that with every person I look at, when I see the word vary come up in a few times, my recommendation is not to kick it out of your vocabulary, because we do need it at some points, but a lot of us have become too accustomed to using vary. And the irony is that when we use vary, we think we're actually narrowing what we mean and we're communicating clearly what we mean. Actually, most of the time, vary just gets in the way of us explaining something. So instead of saying before the attacks of September 11th, 2001, airport security was very mellow, which you're trying to state things were not good with airport security. We did not take very good care of our airports, right? It's a little bit quicker to the reader to say before the attacks of September 11th, airport security was mellow, right? That states the fact much sooner. So don't get rid of vary entirely, but let's get into the habit of only using it absolutely when necessary, okay? Also, this is a great example of making sure we choose words that mean what we say. Now, personally, I know what you're getting after, right? You're trying to say that airport security was not as stringent, was not as intentional as we have now. But the problem with the word mellow is that if you were to look it up right now in a dictionary, and this is typically how we use it and how we talk, right? When we say mellow, we either tend to mean like with music or with art that's very relaxing, that it's easy on the ears, it kind of soothes us a little bit, right? Or mellow's a descriptor for a personality, right? If someone has a mellow personality, they're very easy to get along with, right? So that sort of gets at what you want to say about airport security, but not entirely. And I think that there were better words out there and available to you, such as vulnerable or unimpressive or overlooked, or I'm sure you probably have already thought about other ones that could go there. So I would just kind of be mindful of that, especially with your descriptors like adjectives and adverbs. And then here, I felt like this was an incredibly well-written sentence. I feel like that this would have been really strong as this kind of summary statement after this paragraph, because you go down here with this very precise piece of data, which was great. I think it would have been much more, it's much more related to this sentence here that also talks about bags, right? So I think if you were to connect this one with this one here and make this the last sentence of the paragraph, it just would have allowed that really strong sentence to have been enjoyed more by the reader. But again, great sentence. It's decent where it is, but just moving it a little bit would have improved it by a lot. Okay, this sentence right here was a little confusing only because even after 9/11, right, we're still focused on building codes that make a primary pursuit out of strong structures and fire safety, right? So that's actually not a giant difference. What you did highlight, though, was that a lot of architects put aesthetics prior or before architecture, before strength, before fire safety. And I think had you moved this one up to the beginning, it would have shown the reader, oh, she's going to draw a contrast between aesthetics and safety, which you do a great job down here with, but just again, reordering a few sentences would have really helped you out in the long run. One other quick thought, and I think I'm going to probably wrap up here because everything else is either self-explanatory or we'll talk about it later on in a workshop or in other essays. But this right here is what we call passive voice, and it's a sentence style that we want to use sparingly, a lot like that adverb very. Now, passive voice is when we have what's called a linking verb. So are, is, were, plus a verb that is past tense like that. So past, right? What happens is it just kind of runs the risk of making kind of what I'll call a slow sentence. One alternative, whenever you want to do what's called passive voice, is to try to get the subject to be more of an actor. So here, 48 laws were passed, right? That happened to the laws, right? They were passed. But we could improve the sentence a little bit with active voice, which means we're going to put the subject in front of a verb. So one alternative to what you had could have been Congress passed 48 laws in response to terrorism. So I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, don't sweat it. We're going to talk about the difference between active voice, which again is when the subject comes before the verb like that, and when the subject is acting the verb, or passive voice when we have a subject being acted on by something else. Okay? And then one last comment here. I'm going to wrap up. In your conclusion, which was great, you kind of repeated, well, not kind of, you did. This sentence was repeated from the introductory paragraph. And I just think that there are a few different options you had to potentially restate it, which is right. That's the point of a conclusion. So you're doing the job of a conclusion, but we don't want to just repeat a whole sentence. We want to circle back to it, but in a different way. So I offered one other example over here. America has made many important changes since the attacks of September 11th, 2001. So I hope that made sense. Again, great job. Gosh, I could make a whole nother video about what was so strong about this. But consider these edits, think about them, and we'll talk more on Tuesday about what to do with them. Great job again.